housing secretary. This as Mr. Trump's national security advisor, General Michael Flynn, and his son are under fire for peddling conspiracy theories. We are just 45 days away from Inauguration Day, so let's begin with CNN's Jessica Schneider. She's live outside of Trump Tower in New York. What's the latest, Jessica?
Well, Allison, it'll be down to business right here at Trump Tower before Donald Trump plays to those crowds. At the second stop in his so-called thank you tour will be in Fayetteville, North Carolina tonight at 7 p.m. You know, top advisor Kellyanne Conway telling us Donald Trump continuing his victory lap by visiting 3 more states this week.
The president-elect loves most is oxygen, getting oxygen directly from the people.
The president-elect heading to North Carolina today, and on Thursday he'll travel to Iowa, Michigan on Friday. Trump's team says he'll formally announce another cabinet appointment tonight.
Mad Dog matters.
Touting the credentials of his defense secretary pick, retired Marine General James Mattis. Trump also tapping Dr. Ben Carson to be housing secretary.
We're excited to have Dr. Carson as our intended nominee.
Trump describes Carson as brilliant, declaring he is, quote, passionate about strengthening communities and families within those communities. Some are calling Carson's qualifications into question. Last month, a key confidant of Carson's said running an agency isn't his strength. Democrats now arguing he's woefully unqualified. Meanwhile, Trump National Security Aide General Michael Flynn coming under fire. Flynn's son continuing to push a baseless conspiracy theory that led a man to fire an assault weapon inside a Washington pizza shop. The White House weighing in.
We all hold a responsibility, regardless of whether or not we are planning to serve in a government position or if one of our family members is planning to serve in a government position, that we shouldn't be propagating false things that could inspire violence.
The White House also responding to Trump's controversial phone call with Taiwan's president, stressing the U.S.'s commitment to the One China policy.
Some of the progress that we have made in our relationship with China could be undermined by this.
On CEO Rex Tillerson, his name has now been thrown into the mix for potential Secretary of State pick. Also, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, as well as former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, just back in the U.S. from a visit to China, where he did meet with President Xi. But of course, still buzzing out here, that meeting between Al Gore and Donald Trump that happened yesterday. The topic, climate change, something that Trump has previously called a hoax. Al Gore merely saying, without much more, that it was a lengthy and interesting discussion. Chris?
Some controversy there. It was supposed to be with Ivanka, which raised questions about whether or not the daughter was going to be involved with the government and all the conflicts, and then they made it a broader meeting. Jessica Schneider, thank you very much. All right, enough for politics. Let's get down to some policy and how your life will or will not change for the better under President Trump. Joining us right now is Anthony Scaramucci, a member of Donald Trump's presidential transition team. Good to see you.
Great to be here, Chris. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Let's talk about, in a telescoped way, what the carrier deal means for job savings policy. Give me why you think it's a good deal in the face of concerns that while it was a good headline maker for you and the administration, it is a dangerous precedent going forward for basically paying off a company to stay.
Well, see, we don't really see it as paying off a company to stay. I think what we're going to try to do in the administration is by lowering taxes, Chris, and reducing some of the regulatory environment in the country, the cost of doing business in the United States will be a lot cheaper. Moreover, if we can make the trade deals a little bit more fair and so that there's not the asymmetry that you're now seeing in the trade deals where goods and services can flow freely into the United States, but our goods and services are embargoed elsewhere, that combination of things will mean on a going forward basis that CEOs and CFOs all over the country can look at the capital allocation models that they're using and say that it's better to deploy that capital in the United States. So what I would say to your view is just remember that taxes are a price for services, and so we've got to get the quality of the services in line with the taxes. Our corporate tax rates, Chris, are the highest in the industrialized world.
Only the nominal,
they have to come down.
Only the notional rates, right? Because the practical rate winds up being well under 20%. Because even though there's this notional rate of what they're going to pay, 30, 40%, nobody pays that. So there's a little bit of a deceptive.
Well, Chris, let me push back a little bit on that. That may be true. That may be true for the most sophisticated companies that have the most sophisticated accountants, but the mom and pop businesses in the United States and the small LLCs, they do get hammered on these taxes. So I think we would both agree that simplifying the tax code, making it easier to understand for the average American, businesses large and small, the good thing for the United States, and will.
Are you willing to free up small businesses, mom and pops, as you call them, from their current tax status, which is they get taxed as individuals? You know, so LLCs, as you and I know, and people at home need to learn about, is those are flow-through entities. They don't. Most of them aren't big C corporations that deal with it that way. You know, for a long time, small businesses have wanted that. Would a Trump administration create a tax bracket that gives protection to small businesses so they don't get taxed as ordinary individuals?
Yes, I mean, we're going to roll that proposal out, and what you'll see is that there's cohesion between the corporate income tax and the personal income tax, so that it'll be very easy for people to understand, and we hope that in certain areas it will be revenue neutral, particularly on the high end, as Secretary Treasury designee last week said, Stephen Mnuchin.
All right, now, Anthony, we ran a little bit away from the carrier deal, so let me just get you back there for 1 second, then I want to ask you about a couple of the picks you guys are thinking of making. That deal, again, it looked good. Saving families, you know, nobody should be arguing with that. It's that carrier is still going to sweat a lot of jobs across the border. And in that, we see the reality. You can't save enough American jobs by just giving tax inducements. And what you created is now the potential for the next carrier. The companies who will come forward and say, well, I'm going to lose jobs. Where are my inducements? What are you going to do for me? And that's why government usually stays out of the business of picking winners and losers. So why, you know, the carrier deal may have made sense politically, but what about from a policy standpoint?
Well, listen, again, what I would say about that is that we want to blanket this, and so by reducing the cost of doing business across the United States through a combination of tax, regulation, even the repatriation of the treaties, you know, reconciling the treaties to create the repatriation of trillions of dollars that are held offshore, Chris, we can come up with an incentive plan to bring that capital back into the United States and incentivize those corporations to put it into human capital, training, manufacturing. So there's no way that you can tell me that there isn't a cocktail of things that we could put together that could make the manufacturing profile for the United States more attractive and bring more Americans back to work. Now,
that's not what I'm saying, though, Anthony. I'm just talking about these people here in Carrier. I get your basket, your cocktail argument, and we'll look for what you go forward with, what the details are in the regulations, and then we'll be able to make more sense of it. But on this, you know, Sarah Palin, you know, called it crony capitalism. You got McCarthy and Ryan lining up and saying, we're not going to put a tariff on companies that send jobs across the border on their goods that come back. You know, they're not seeing these moves that you're seeing as strength and projecting a good image as things that are viable for business.
Well, I think it's a little bit early. I think people are jumping the gun on that. If you just per worker, if you think about all of the positive externalities of those workers staying in Indiana, their state income tax, their lack of dependency from the government in terms of unemployment, the flow through to the shopping malls and the local businesses in the community is done, you would see that it's a very positive.
The chance to ask for the same thing.
Exactly right. And so if you do a case-by-case cost-benefit analysis, my guess is that you can come up with strategies from the government working in partnership with private enterprise to make these deals work for the American people. But just let me finish this point. If you looked at the situation where you're losing those jobs and all of those people have to go on a form of governmental dependency, unemployment insurance, it wreaks havoc not only on the family and the self-esteem of the people that are at work, but it puts another burden on the taxpayers. And so you have to remember, in the United States, we both agree on this. We want to have a social safety net to protect people fall into it. And it's better for the government to work in partnership with American businesses to prevent that from happening, Chris.
And I'm just saying that short term, it looks good. Nobody wants to see families out around the holiday. But carriers sweating more jobs than they're keeping, as you know, it doesn't come out very often, but that's the truth. And now other companies may ask for the same. But Anthony, I appreciate you coming on to lay out the policy. Let's keep doing it going forward.
Okay, you got it. I think it's early. Let's see how the plans unfold.
He's not even in office yet. It's absolutely early. I'll talk to you soon. Be well. Allison.
Okay, a month after Election Day, North Carolinians finally know who their next governor will be. Incumbent Pat McCrory announcing in a video message that he is conceding the race to Attorney General Roy Cooper. McCrory's tenure was marred by defiantly standing by a controversial ban on transgender people using the bathroom of their choice. The bill cost the state millions as major events pulled their businesses to boycott.
All right, there's just a gruesome scene inside that Oakland warehouse. Now the count is 36 people lost their lives. It's certainly the city's worst fire in more than a century. Firefighters are really having to go shovel by shovel to look for victims because of the intensity of the heat and now all the debris. CNN's Stephanie Elam is live there. The whole community has come together in this state of anguish waiting for more information.
That is definitely the case, Chris, and what we can tell you is that of the 36 people that lost their lives that we know of so far, 32 of them have been identified either positively or tentatively. They said they don't expect any more large numbers of people who lost their lives in this fire, so they're working their way through there. But what we also learned is people who lived inside there, went inside this unit, knew that it may have had some safety concerns. And we also know that the man who was the leaseholder was often allowing these kind of parties thrown in the unit, even though the city says that they didn't have permits to throw parties inside this warehouse. Our affiliate here in the Bay Area, KGO, caught up with him. This is what he had to say.
Do you have anything to say to the families that lost their loved ones there? I mean, people have been wondering if you have anything to say to them.
They're my children. They're my friends. They're my family. They're my loves. They're my future. What else do I have to say?
And a lot of people here are preparing for the rain. The investigators, officials saying that they are going to continue to work through this slowly, methodically, despite the fact that the rain is coming. Allison.
Oh, Stephanie, I know you've told us just what painstaking and emotional work that is. Thank you for the update. We'll check back with you. Meanwhile, another story that we need to update you on, a Georgia dad convicted in the death of his son. He has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justin Ross Harris, you'll remember, left his 22-month-old son Cooper in a hot car back in 2014 while he went to work for 7 hours. The defense argued the 35-year-old accidentally left his son in the car because his morning routine had changed. Harris plans to appeal the verdict.
President-elect Donald Trump claims there were millions of illegal votes cast during the election. That's just not true. He says there are studies to prove it. Guess what? We have the people behind the studies that he's talking about. Next.
Where will the lead take us today? Straight to the source.
Would Israel be willing to go along with those demands?
To a side you haven't seen.
That smells a young man's game.
All the way to the heart of a problem.
What is going on in Ferguson, Missouri, in downtown America?
Maybe all the way to the president.
Do you think you were naive back then?
The Lead with Jake Tapper. Weekdays at 4.